TOC, what's going on this morning? Can we give a prophetic sound to the God that we serve this morning? Just trying to see where y'all at. That's all you got this morning? You got a little bit more in there. Let me see what I'm working with today, what we dealing with, what's really going on in the house of the Lord. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. I want to jump right into this thing. Pastor's right. I feel like preaching this morning. Y'all feel like hearing a word? I feel like I got one, baby. Let's go. Judges 6:25-31. If you have it, go ahead and read along with me. We're going to put it up on the screen. It's talking about the life of Gideon, judge of Israel. Y'all ready? Judges 6:25-31 says, that night the Lord said to him, take your father's bull and the second bull, 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the Asherah that is beside it. Build an altar to the Lord your God on top of the stronghold here with stones laid in due order. Then take the second bull and offer it as a burnt offering with the wood of the Asherah that you shall cut down. So Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord had told him. But because he was too afraid of his family and the men of the town, he did it. He didn't do it by day, he did it by night. When the men of the town rose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was broken down, and the Asherah beside it was cut down. The second bull was offered on the altar that had been built, and they said to one another, who has done this thing? And after they had searched and inquired, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. Then the men of the town said to Joash, bring out your son that he may die, for he has broken down the altar of Baal and cut down the Asherah beside it. But Joash said to all who stood against him, who will contend for Baal, or will you save him? Whoever contends for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because his altar has been broken down. If he is a god, let him contend for himself. I'm preaching on the subject of life-altering altars. Life-altering altars. Your altars of worship can alter your life. Your altars of worship, the altars that you choose to worship at can alter the trajectory of your life for better or for worse. They can have a detrimental effect to the outcome of your life for better or for worse, for good or for bad. And in our text today, we see Gideon tasked with a mission from God, which turns out to be the beginning stages of Gideon leading God's people to conquering the Midianites in the beginning of chapter 6. The Bible says that the Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord, so God handed them over to the Midianites for 7 years of oppression and slavery and torture, and the Midianites were evil and cruel to Israel. They would pull up on camelback too numerous to count, pillage all their sheep and their crops, pillage their goats, cattle, and livestock, take everything that they had, destroy their land, and attack Israel repeatedly, so much so that Israel resorted to making mountaintop caves and caverns and hiding out from the Midianites so that they could resist their attacks. The Bible says that Israel was famished. They were starving. They were dying of starvation because of the attacks of the Midianites. And then it says that the Bible says that the Israelites finally cried out for help to God. Has anybody ever been in that point where you've cried out for help to God? You've been in a place where only God can help you, only God can save you. And so the Bible says that God sent a prophet, an unnamed prophet, to tell them. God says, yo, I saved y'all from the Egyptians, delivered you from them, broke you out of slavery. I drove out your enemies, and I gave you their land. And I told you, I am the Lord your God. And you must not worship the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you now live, but you wouldn't listen. See, Israel was stuck in a repetitive cycle. The cycle consisted of sin. The Bible says that they would do evil in the sight of the Lord, and they would sin, and God would turn them over to that sin, which would lead to Israel becoming slaves and in bondage. And then it says that they would repent, they would cry out to God for help. God would send a judge, a deliverer to save them, and then there would be peace. Somebody say peace. There would be momentary peace. But then that cycle would start again. This was a generational cycle. This was a generational cycle that they would just keep on sinning, and that sin was usually idolatry. They were worshiping at idolatrous altars, and it would lead them to slavery, and then they would cry out for God's help. God would send a judge to deliver them, and then there would be peace. Somebody say peace. Gideon's people were in desperate need of peace because they were being pillaged and ravished in the most brutal of ways. And just before our text, an angel of the Lord shows up to Gideon. In the Old Testament, this is what's called a theophany, Jesus in human form as the angel of the Lord. He showed up many times in the Old Testament this way. So the angel of the Lord here is Jesus before his incarnation. And he's like, yo, mighty man of valor. He's talking to Gideon, mighty man of valor. God is with you. Go and save your people. Gideon is like, me, I'm the weakest in my clan. My clan is the weakest in Manasseh. You can't be talking about me. I'm too weak for this. How is God with me? The angel of the Lord is like, yeah, go and save your people from the Midianites. He's like, what are you talking about? We're getting killed out here. We're dying of starvation. Don't you see what's going on? But Gideon prepared an offering. He said, yo, listen, if God's really with me, I need a sign. He didn't know that this was the angel of the Lord. He didn't know he was seeing Jesus in the flesh here. He just thought it was somebody telling him that God was with him. So he prepares an offering of meat and bread, and he puts it down on some rocks in front of the angel of the Lord. He's like, man, you're going to have to show me something. If this is a mission from God, if you're a messenger of God, I need to know right now. And then the Bible says that the angel of the Lord stuck his staff out. He touched the offering that Gideon had gave him, and boom, flames flew up from the rock. Consuming fire consumed the offering. Gideon's like, oh, man, I seen the angel of the Lord. Surely this is of God. The angel says, peace be with you. Somebody say peace. He says, surely you will not die. Gideon was so overtaken and overwhelmed by what happened. He built an altar to God. He called the altar Jehovah Shalom. Somebody say peace. Jehovah Shalom means the Lord is peace. Come on, somebody say peace. This brings us to our foundational text. I promise I'm going to give you a time to shout, but I need to let you know what the backdrop looked like real quick. And now Gideon, he's fresh off the altar of Jehovah Shalom. He's fresh off the altar of peace. And then God come knocking to disturb his peace. Hey, yo, I got a mission for you. Here you go. Ain't that just like the God that we serve to disturb our peace? We finally at peace, but God's like, yeah, now I can use you. All right, Gideon, I'm going to need you to run up in your father's house and tear down them altars to Baal real quick. I'm going to need you to cut down that Asherah pole. I'm going to need you to take your father's bull, and build me an altar and then sacrifice that bull unto me. Gave him a mission. See, this is a big deal, and to understand the significance of this task, we have to understand the significance of the altar of God and the consequences of worshiping at idolatrous altars. Y'all ready? In ancient times, altars were created as places of consecration. They were set apart where man could meet with God, where man could intersect with God Almighty and commune with him. Altars were built for a number of different reasons. Most of the time, and a lot of times in the Bible, God would ask for the altar to be built unto him. See, there's also good generational cycles out here. I believe some believers in this place understand what I'm saying. See, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they had a good generational cycle going where they would create altars of memorials to God. They would create altars of remembrance to God. They would create altars of covenant to the Lord God Almighty. Anybody got any good generational cycles going on in this place? Altars are places of worship, intercession. They're places of prayer. They're places of forgiveness and covenant with God. They're places of remembrance. But most notably, and here in our text, altars were places of sacrifice. Somebody say sacrifice. Animals had to be slain and torn apart. Blood had to spill on that altar in order for the atonement of sins to take effect. Fire from the hand of God will consume the sacrifices on that old bloody altar. In the Greek, the word altar means a place of sacrifice. We lay it all down on that altar. Yeah, on that old brazen altar. We sacrifice our lives on that altar. We give everything to Jesus on the altar. In the Hebrew, the word for altar means slaughter. Yeah, because it gets messy on the altar. Yeah, it wasn't pretty on the altar. Yeah, we got a physical altar right here, and it ain't always pretty on the altar. Y'all ain't ready? It ain't always pretty on the altar. We got boogers and snot on the altar. We got Kleenexes that have been used on the altar. We proclaiming the truth of Jesus Christ. We got sweat and tears on the altar. Y'all don't hear me this morning? Yeah, it ain't always pretty on the altar. Yeah, females got lashes stuck on the altar. Why? Because salvation ain't always pretty out here. Yeah, y'all don't hear what I'm saying. I'm trying to tell you, we got vomit on the altar. Why? Because deliverance gets messy sometimes. I wish I had a church that was ready for what I'm about to tell them. It ain't always pretty on the altar. Prayers get answered on this altar. We commune with the living God on this altar. It ain't always pretty out here. And now we have the honor and the privilege to turn any place. Listen to what I'm saying. Our hearts. I love that shirt. Can you go ahead and stand up real quick and show people that shirt? Our hearts are altars that get to burn with the fire of God. Now our hearts are the altars of the living God. Somebody got to hear what I'm saying this morning. And now we have the honor and the privilege to turn any place at any given time by the grace of our living God into an altar. When you're driving into work, you can turn that vehicle into a vessel right quick. It might be taking you to work, but it's taking me to the throne of grace. I wish I had a church that was ready to... Come on, somebody. You can turn any place at any given time into an altar. You can turn your house into an altar. Turn a room into an altar. Somebody got a war room. Somebody got a secret place. Go ahead and turn your closet into an altar of the living God. That's when you're tucking your kids in to sleep. Go ahead and say a prayer. Yeah, lay hands on them real quick. Yeah, tuck them in with the Spirit of God and turn your kids' rooms into an altar. I wish I had some parents that would praise the living God right now. Glory be to God. Romans 12:1 says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. The altar. It's where our flesh has to die. The altar of God. It's where we maintain relationship with the Father. The altar is a place of honor, worship. God bless you. Reverence. The altar is a place of reverence. That's why it wasn't until Abraham laid his son Isaac on that altar that God finally said, now I know that you fear the living God, because you did not withhold your son from me, your only son. Does anybody revere the living God in this place? It moves the heart of God when you revere him. Does anybody revere the living God in here? Is anybody building altars to him in this place? This is what makes worshiping at idolatrous altars so dangerous. It makes it life-altering because your altar of worship can alter your life. It can change the trajectory of your life. Idol worship is attractive because it's based around getting for your own gain. And the end goal is peace. Somebody say peace. Idolatry is sexy because there's no demands put on your life. You worship at the wrong altars because nothing's off limit. You ain't even got to be holy out here. Idol worship is about you. You have the power. You in control. It's centered around self. But altars to God are just the opposite. It's about sacrificing to him, denying ourselves, our fleshly desires and passions, and picking up our cross and following the narrow road that Jesus is leading us on. Can I get an amen in the building? Come on. God knows man has a propensity to be drawn to idols. Why is it the first commandment? Everybody in here has broken that commandment at some point in their lives, possibly right now at this moment. Should be no other gods. The idols we choose just pushing us farther and farther away from the Creator and the source of true peace. But man will use anything that we can fashion with these hands, anything that we can think about with our creative minds to worship so that we can get peace. Saw some old crazy stuff. People out here worshiping microchips because they said that God is from a foreign planet, and it's like, what? We'll find anything to worship. There's a religion where people worship body parts with a real founder. What is going on? Like, we will find anything to worship, even if you don't believe that you worship in something. Anything that has its rightful place on your heart, it has an unrightful place on your heart that belongs to Jesus Christ, is idolatry. What altars are you worshiping at this morning? Let's go deep. Can we go Bible on them? Let's go deep. Let's go deep. If you know, you know. Let's go deep. Can we go into the Bible real quick? Yeah. Nowadays, whatever's in the world that we turn to for a life of safety and security, that's an idol. Oh, anything that we turn to for prosperity and the flourishing, quote unquote, good life, that's an idol. Anything we turn to for a life of peace outside of Jesus Christ, that is an altar. Any alliances that we create or allegiances that we forge or oaths that we swear, those are modern day Asherahs and Baals out here. Yeah, they still alive, prevalent today. Baal and Asherah, fertility gods. Baal was often depicted with a thunderbolt in his hand because he was the storm god. He was supposedly one that would make it rain and crops would grow, and then the cattle and the goats and the livestock would have things to eat. He was a fertility god, and he was often seen with next to a pole called Asherah, which was a fertility goddess. They promised that old flourishing good life. They would give you back more than you gave them. See, Baal and Asherah was like an ancient Planned Parenthood. Y'all ain't ready to rock with me this morning. You had to sacrifice your firstborn, and they promised to give you more, multiply. And this is what was going on in the middle of Gideon's house. His house was a hub where people would come from society all over. His father's house was a hub for people to worship Baal and Asherah. They were sacrificing children. They were burning alive in front, right there at his crib. What altars are you worshiping on? See, the sacrifices that people were making were supposedly going to lead to fertility of the land, an increase in crops, an increase of livestock, increase of money, increase of food. It was supposed to bring the exact thing that the Midianites were taking and pillaging from them. So instead of turning to God, they turned to these idolatrous altars of Baal and Asherah to give them what they thought a silent God wasn't going to give them, when it was that very thing that was making God withhold his hand. He's like, dang, I want to bless y'all, but y'all got something in the way of me blessing you. I want to help you, but you got something in the way of me helping you, and y'all don't even see that it's them old altars. Yeah, so this is where we pick up in the story of Gideon, where he's called to save Israel from oppression and restore peace. I want to point out 3 life-altering moves that Gideon, he made in order to restore peace. Somebody say peace. Peace in the land, peace between God and his people. Peace, somebody say peace. I believe when we apply these moves that Gideon made to our lives, we will also receive the peace of God. The first move Gideon made was to get rid of the lowercase g's. Come on, touch your neighbor real quick. Wake him up this morning and say, get rid of the lowercase g's. Get rid of the lowercase g's. And so we're on the same page. In case there's an age gap, I'm going to break that on down real quick for you. A G in pop culture stands for gangster. But it's changed. It's changed over time. It's kind of changed and evolved into a real one. Is there any real ones in this place? When you see a real one, somebody that's real, they usually refer to by their peers as a G. When there's anybody that's real about what they say, that really does what they does, right? That's really about the work of the Lord. Is there any G's in this place? Is there anybody that stands on business? See, when Jesus was quote unquote lost, he was 12 years old. His parents went to go see him. They found him in the temple of God. He answered them. He said, didn't you know I was about my Father's business? Is there anybody that's about the Father's business in here? If so, you might be referred to as a G. You might be a real one. I'm by myself this morning. Get rid of the lowercase g's. In the Bible, whenever we read about our great God, there's always grammatical respect on his name. Woo! His name, when you come across it, the G is always capitalized. Y'all don't hear what I'm saying. Oh, but when you run up on them old false gods, them old fake gods, them old false idols in the text. Yeah, when you come across false gods in scriptures, their names always begin with a lowercase g. Because there's only one God. I wish I had a church that would praise that one God. There's only one God. There's only one God. I don't know which God is on your heart, but he can't hold a candle to my God. So Yahweh said, yeah, Gideon, run up in your father's crib and tear down that altar to Baal because there's only one God. Oh, yeah. I see we on the same page. We reading from the same sheet of music this morning. Yeah, he said, Gideon, run up in your father's crib and cut down that Asherah pole that's beside it because there's only one God. Then he said, Gideon, build me an altar and sacrifice that bull on the altar because there's only one God. Listen, God is through with the bull. I'm trying to tell you this morning. Put it on the altar. God is God all by himself. He don't need your help. There is only one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. And we will love the Lord our God with all our hearts, with all our soul, and with all our strength. I'm trying to tell you that we serve a God that loves sharing. Yes, he does. He'll share his mercy. He'll share his goodness. He will share his blessings. But there's one thing that he will not serve. Serve to me and you. There's one thing that he will not share. And that's his glory. That's his glory. Touch your neighbor and say the glory, the glory, the glory. The glory is reserved for God alone. He will not share it at any cost. The glory belongs to God. Yeah, in order to restore peace, we have to identify and eradicate the lowercase g's. This is what Gideon does. In a way, he's functioning kind of like the high priest, not only of his home, but of all of Israel by sacrificing the burnt offering. Some of you may have to run up in your family's crib and act as the high priest. Tear down those altars, those generational altars. Tear down those cultural altars that are so ingrained in your DNA. Tear down those altars. Pull them down with boldness by the Spirit of the living God. Some of you may have to act like the high priest of your home while still honoring your mother and your father, while still honoring your wife, while still honoring your husband, while still honoring your children and your family. See, in the same way, our hearts are altars that burn for God. If we're not careful, they can also become altars for idols. See, some of us, maybe without even knowing, maybe you're actively worshiping generational altars that have been handed down to you. Are you worshiping at the same idolatrous altars of your parents or your grandparents? Maybe they were chasers of success and power and fame. Maybe they worshiped at those altars. Maybe they worshiped money. Nobody in here does that, right? Because they ain't never have it. Your grandparents ain't never have it. All you've seen is, man, if I could ever just get some money, maybe we could get out of the hood. Maybe we could become successful if I could just get some money. So much so that it's consuming your thoughts and your minds. Has generational altars been passed down to you? Maybe you've seen your parents or your grandparents worship at the altars of false idols, false religions. And maybe that's what brings you security and comfort and peace. Maybe you're worshiping at the altar of the corporate ladder and careers because that's what you've seen your parents do. Work, work, work. I can't quit. I can't stop. Work, work, work. That's what you've seen your grandparents. It's generational things that get handed down to us that we don't even realize we're worshiping at these altars. Maybe it's your appearance. Maybe you worship at the altar of prestige and popularity, and you're trying so hard to fit in with the crowd that don't want nothing to do with you because you got the oil of the Lord on you, but you want to be over here, and God is telling you, yeah, the oil's on you. It's too slippery. They can't hold you or wrap you or keep you. Where I'm trying to take you, they can't go. What altars are you worshiping on? Is there any unholy allegiances in this place? Any unholy addictions? Your grandparents worshiped at the altar of addiction, and so you worship at the altar of addiction. Your grandparents or your great-grandparents, and now your parents worship at the altar of addiction. They actually say, I'm an addict. They say, I'm an alcoholic, but God don't see it like that. When you come to the throne of grace, He's changed your name. I wonder what altars you are worshiping at that have been passed down to you, that are ingrained in your DNA, and you don't know no better. But today is the day of salvation. I wonder what cultural altars where they said you ain't good enough, and that's all you knew because they said your parents weren't and your grandparents weren't good enough. The altars of bitterness and resentment, they fall right now in the name of Jesus. But you got to just be bold and pull down those altars. Who cares what they said about you when the God that we serve has called you a conqueror? Come on, let's give God a shout of praise this morning. I feel this thing. I feel like preaching this morning. We can't win spiritual battles with unholy allegiances. Leads me to my next point. Do it anyway. Even when facing adversity, obey the Lord and do it anyway. Maybe you're afraid to start chipping away at those altars for fear of your parents or your family's rejection, disapproval, or worse. Do it anyway. Touch your neighbor and tell him, do it anyway. Do it anyway. Come on, ain't no COVID. Touch your neighbor and tell him, do it anyway. The text says Gideon was fearful of the people of the town and others of his father's household catching wind of what he was doing, so he did it by night. And I believe that was wisdom because God was with him. So he did it by night because imagine running up in Planned Parenthood trying to destroy and tear everything down in the middle of the day. You're going to meet some resistance. So he took 10 men of his household and did it by night. I mean, they ratted on him, but they told on him. But at least he got the job done. Yeah, Gideon was fearful, but he was faithful. He was scared, but he was obedient. Is anybody in here? Some of the greatest things I've ever gotten to do, appreciate you, bro. Some of the greatest things I ever got to do for the Lord were on the other side of fear. You got to do it anyway. He was scared, but he did it anyway. Do it anyway. You ever been there? God's calling you to do some things. God pricks your heart. Yo, man, that's wrong. What you're doing right here is wrong. Hey, yo, what you're doing right here is going to lead to death. And you want to act on it. But fear holds you back. What they going to say about me? Who cares? What they say about Jesus? So yeah, Gideon was fearful because he knew just how far the people had drifted from God. Listen, we talk about altars. It's such a serious topic. Think about it. The first murder in the Bible was over an altar. Abel's bloody animal sacrifices on that altar to the Lord was so pleasing to God that Cain just couldn't take it and he murdered his brother. Y'all don't hear what I'm saying today. The people were so far from God, and Gideon knew that. How do we know? Because we see in the text there was no acknowledgement of the new altars unto God that was built, only outrage for the ones that were torn down. The people are mad at how God is answering their prayers. God's giving them a choice, though, just like he gives you a choice. Y'all want to be free or nah? Y'all want my help or nah? Listen, there was an opportunity for peace to be in the land, but it was like they was choosing starvation because they wanted to kill and murder the exact way that God wanted to help them. They want to kill the one that he sent. That sounds familiar to me. That sounds like Jesus. We want to be free out here, but let's go ahead and kill the one who can make us free out here. We want peace out here, but let's go ahead and crucify the one who will give us peace out here. People don't even realize what's going on. The very same people in the beginning of the chapter that were crying out to God for peace, Lord, we starving out here, we dying, we famished, we need you, Lord, don't you hear us? Ain't we supposed to be your people? Where you at, God? They want to kill the answer that he sent. Y'all don't hear what I'm saying. They realize what happened to their altars. They go at Joash's dad. They're like, yo, Joash, where Gideon at? Bring him out, because we're going to kill him. Why? Because he tore down our altars. Something shifts in people's spirits when you start messing with their altars. Woo! Y'all don't hear what I'm saying this morning. Something shifts in people when you start messing with their altars. When you start calling out some things, something shifts inside of them. I don't want to be your friend no more. I don't care. I'm about this life. Something shifts when you start messing with some stuff. But I'm going to stand on business and represent the God that I serve. I know what he did to me. It's fresh in my mind. My family going to be free out here. You got to know that you built for this. You were built. If you're a believer, you were built for this. You might be scared, but you were built for this. When you become a believer and you worship at the altar of the Father with a repentant heart, God don't see your sin. God don't see your yesterday. He don't see your mistakes. When you are his son, he sees the Son of the living God. He don't see you, he sees Jesus. He don't see your sin, he sees Jesus. He don't see your mistakes, he sees Jesus. He don't see your shortcomings, he sees Jesus. He don't see your failures, he sees the Son of God. You were built for this. The name Gideon means one who cuts down. Gideon was built for this. I'm going to cut down that Asherah pole. I'm going to cut it down. I'm going to cut it down. You were built for this. Why? Because when God sees you, he sees the Son of the living God. And the Bible says, for this reason was the Son of God made manifest, that he would destroy the works of the devil. That he would destroy the works of the devil. God don't see your sin. He sees Jesus. You were built for this. You were built for this. So I know you're scared, but you got to do it anyway. You might be fearful, but you got to touch your neighbor real quick and tell him, do it anyway. I'm preaching better than y'all clapping right now. Hallelujah. See, God knew you'd be at this very place at this very moment, listening to this very message that's confronting your spirit. You got some life-altering decisions to make. Do I worship at the altar of idols, or do I worship at the altar of the God who answers by fire? It's your choice. But I got my fire from the altar of God. The moment I came to Christ, something was stirred up within me. I got my fire from the altar of God. When I came to the cross, he set a fire up in my bones that I got to preach this thing. I get my fire from the altar of God. Get your fire from the altar of the Lord. Serving the Lord seems difficult, do it anyway. Tearing down altars to idols seems hard, do it anyway. Tear down that sexual perversion, do it anyway. Tear down that drug addiction, do it anyway. Resist temptation, do it anyway. Stand against the enemy, do it anyway. Flee from temptation. It's difficult, but do it anyway. Your altars of worship can alter your life. When I came to the Lord, I was on a path that was so dangerous. When I gave my life to Jesus, my wife wanted to then leave me because I gave my life to Jesus. I ain't had my boys yet, I only had girls. But because I gave my life to Jesus, that's not the man that she married. Threatened to divorce me multiple times. I was going to lose my house, my vehicles, my family. I wouldn't have had my boys to carry on my namesake. Probably would have lost my job. Probably would have been so deep on drugs, more Percocets, popping pills like crazy, drinking, carrying on them generational altars that I didn't realize I was worshiping that, smoking mad Buddha, thinking I was not going to make it. Probably would have 7 baby mamas out here. Thought I could be real in this place. But I chose to worship the living God, even if it meant losing my family. I had to do it anyway. You got to do it anyway. What you sitting here for if you ain't going to do it anyway? Do it anyway. And God saved my wife. He saved my children. He saved my home. We flourishing because the oil is on us. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. I mean, what we talking about? You gotta choose this day whom you will serve. And as for me and my house, we're gonna choose the Lord. I took my stance. I put my flag in the ground. I chose Jesus that day. I choose him today. I choose him every day of my life. I will keep on choosing Jesus. I know it's difficult, but somebody gotta shout, do it anyway. Altars of worship can alter your life in these streets. It's real out here. Within a mile radius, I guarantee we got altars of crack cocaine about this high. People worshiping at them because that's all they seen their grandparents do. That's all they seen daddy do. Daddy was a hustler, so I'm a hustler. They think it's the way out. They think it's the meal ticket. It's altars that are going to fall in this region because TOC out here. Y'all hear what I'm saying? It's shorties around the corner worshiping at the altar of prostitution because grandma was a prostitute. Yeah, because mommy's a prostitute. It's the only way we can make it, so they selling their bodies because the church is quiet. Not this one, though. I said not this one, though. Not this one, though. Not this one, though. Not this one, though. Not this one. Not this one. Not this one. We ain't come out here all this way, put up all this money by the glory of God to pussyfoot around with the devil. We ain't come to take a nap. We ain't come to take a break. We came to take over. The Lord of Lords is in this place. Deliverance is in this place. Salvation is in this place. I feel like preaching this thing. Your altars of worship can alter your life, man. The next move we see Gideon make in order to restore peace for Israel, he made God supreme. He built him an altar and he added fuel to the fire. Somebody say fuel to the fire. Yeah, say fuel the fire. Fuel the fire. Fuel the fire. Build his altar and he'll light the flame, but you gotta build his altar. And we let him fuel the fire. The lowercase g's are destroyed. He washed you of your sin. Now build his altar. He made you a new creation. Now make him an altar. Leviticus 9, the people of God witnessed something so incredible. They saw the power of God firsthand. The Bible says that a consuming fire flew out of the presence of God and consumed the offering on the altar. And all the people of Israel fell on their faces because of the power of God. They shouted for joy and fell on their faces. Something happens when we see the power of God. Woo! I get fired up when I see altars fall. I get fired up when I see idols break. I get fired up when I see salvation in this place. I get fired up when I see deliverance. Something happens when we see the power of God on full display. First thing Noah did when he got off the ark after God cleansed the earth from sin is build God an altar. Make him supreme. God tells Gideon, build my altar away from those idols. On top of that hilltop stronghold, the hilltop sanctuary for everybody to see so that there's no mistaking who the Most High God is. Woo! There's a temptation to build the altar of God alongside the torn down altars. We tear down the altars, but we're building the altar of God. But then we got the altar of God. You know, it's a temptation because, you know, if this Jesus thing don't work out, I could, you know, if that's how many think when they come to Jesus and they end up reverting back to lustful passions and desires and all worshiping at idolatrous altars. The Bible says they return to their vomit. Has anybody returned to their vomit in this place? Somebody say, fuel the fire. God will not share his heart with anything that's an abomination to him. It's not just no other God. God tells Gideon, he says to him, use the wood from the Asherah pole that you cut down to fuel the fire on my altar. Somebody say, fuel the fire. Because when God is supreme in your life, you build him an altar. God says, Gideon, yeah, go ahead and use that idol to fuel the fire. Yeah, you torn down those altars. Now it's time to fuel the fire. God is going to fuel your fire. I wish I had a church that could come into agreement with what I'm saying. God is going to fuel the fire. Listen, idolatry might have had you strung out. Woo! Next to dead, locked up and down bad, but God is going to use that idolatrous moment to fuel the fire. He's going to use those altars to fuel the fire. When you testify about how God delivered you from altars of idolatry, it's going to give power to other people that you testify to. When people hear about God working in your life, delivering you from the altar of pornography, it's going to fire them up. It's going to build them up. It's going to add fuel to their fire. It's going to help them keep going. When you testify about how God delivered you from sexual addictions and masturbations and pornography, it's going to give them fire. Listen, God is going to use those that idolatry to fuel his fire. Yeah, he's going to use it to fuel the fire within you. He'll light the flame, but you gotta let him fuel that thing up. How's he going to do it? He's going to use those altars. He's going to use those altars. I get my fire from the altar of God. I get my fire from the altar of God. You got to get your fire from the altar of God. There can't be any strange fire. You got to get your fire from the altar of God. I get my fire from the altar of God. Why? Because God is going to make the devil pay for the fuel. Y'all don't understand what I'm trying to tell you tonight. Y'all don't understand what I'm telling you this morning. God is going to use everything for the good of those who love him. Do you love him? Do you love him? Do you love him in this place? Do you love him? Has he been good to you? Do you love him? Do you love him? He's going to fuel your fire with those idolatrous things you used to worship. I'm going to go ahead and open up the altar real quick. I'm closing now. But I'd like to pray for those that want to meet this God that we're describing here. This God that is for you, who created you with a purpose. Go ahead and stand to your feet tonight, or this morning, excuse me. We got to build his altar. It's a place of transformation. See, the enemy tries to make people think that this altar is a place of condemnation or shame or guilt, where people point the finger, but the altar of God is a place of unity and transformation. There is a people that are with you and for you that want to see God move in your life. So when I say I opened up the altar, we're opening up this place right here for this very moment in time, because God knew you would be here to hear this message. There's something special about the altar of God. When we decide, make up in our minds once and for all to build that altar unto him. where we commune with God and we crucify our flesh, where he gets to work on our hearts. See, when Gideon tore down the altar and he built the altar unto God, it transformed his father's heart, transformed his father's house. It transformed the community in the surrounding regions. When they came to Joash, give us your son. He's like, yo, if Baal is really a god, let him defend himself. Gideon probably thought, man, my dad gonna be so mad. He gonna disown me. He gonna try to kill me too. But the people came to their senses. See, the altar of God is a place of unity. After Gideon built the altar, the people turned back to God. Verse 34 says, then the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon with power. He blew a ram's horn as a call to arms, and the men of the clan of Abiezer came to him. He sent messengers throughout Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, Naphtali, summoning their warriors, and all of them responded. All the warriors responded once the altar of God was built. Unity in our family should start at the altar. True unity in the church should start at the altar. True unity in the community starts at the altar. Unity in our country starts at the altar of God. Unity in the body is birthed at the altar of God. Revival starts at the altar of a burning heart. Come on. Unity starts around the altar. Prayer petitions and salvations, deliverances, healings happen at the altar of God. We become unified by the Spirit when we don't forsake the life-altering altar of the living God. The altar is a place of unity. If you don't know this God that I'm telling you about, that we're proclaiming with passion and joy and love, if you want to receive Jesus Christ into your heart, just come to the altar. Everybody says, well, I'm not ready tomorrow, not today, but tomorrow is not promised. I've talked to people in this church that are here now that have had generational altars, satanic altars. Today is a day to tear those down. Put your flag in the ground. Today is a day to tear those down. Today is the day of salvation. See, Jesus Christ, he defeated death, hell, and the grave. But people want to say, oh, you're going to serve a God that was defeated on the cross? They didn't kill him. He gave up his life. He defeated death, hell, and the grave as the perfect, spotless, sinless, blemish-free Lamb of God, the perfect offering. See, the cross at Calvary was not a place of death. It was an altar of sacrifice. I know somebody in here wants to receive salvation in this place. Why settle for the peace that this world can get or anything that you can do with your human mind when God is willing to give you a peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that will not die when your body passes away, a peace that is eternal. True peace is only found in Jesus Christ. He is the God that restores, the God that heals. He resurrected bodily and ascended to the Father, to the right hand of God the Father in heaven. He is here right now in this place, living in our spirits right now. We want to introduce you to him into the family of Christ. If you are in this place, just come to the Lord. Come to the Lord. Come to the Lord. Come on, church, help me pray. Every altar right now falls in the name of Jesus. Every satanic altar is broken by the blood of Jesus.